The velvet hush of a late-night strategy dinner at Buckingham had barely settled when Princess Anne's voice, calm, but diamond-edged, cut straight through the tinkling glassware. "You are Queen Consort, not Queen." A single sentence, delivered without a tremor, froze cutlery mid-air, and rearranged the balance of power inside Britain's most famous residence. Seconds earlier, courtiers had been exchanging polite pleasantries about regimental charities and summer garden parties. Now every eye darted to King Charles, who sat motionless between the sisters sworn to defend their mother's legacy and the wife determined to write her own chapter in Windsor history. Why does it matter? Because titles in monarchy are more than velvet stitched onto visiting cards. They are the rails on which history runs. Shift them by a syllable and the whole locomotive lurches. Anne, ever her mother's steel-spined lieutenant, had reached her threshold. Too many whispered reports about Camilla, soft launching, sovereign privileges, private audiences scheduled before Charles', an extended hand at engagements where protocol insists she stand half-pace behind, had accumulated like frost on palace windows. The Princess Royal had decided the time for discreet eye rolls was over. She would stake the ground now, before the public caught the scent of drift. Across the room a footman, young enough to have watched the coronation from a boarding school common room, gripped a silver tray so tightly that the decanters rattled. Senior aides exchanged looks laced with calculation. Would the king pacify with charm, or would a fault line crack open in real time? Charles inhaled, eyes flicking to the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II hanging above the fireplace, as though seeking counsel from the paint. Then, gently but firmly, he echoed and subtext. "We owe our mother clarity," he said, voice pitched just loud enough for every corner to hear. "And clarity begins tonight." That sentence, according to an aide who later confessed he barely slept afterwards, loosened the chandelier screws. Not because Camilla would be dethroned, no royal soap opera awaited outside the gates, but because the king had publicly endorsed a conversation usually buried under centuries of etiquette. For once, royal hierarchy was being dissected in real time by its own protagonists, and every marble corridor seemed to lean in to listen. If revelations like these keep you tuned in, slip us a quiet follow after the show. We'll keep the insider briefings flowing without cluttering your feed. The catalyst goes deeper than a single dinner. For months, Camilla's growing authority had been noted by palace watchers, briefing papers routed through her private secretary, guest lists subtly expanded to include her own long-standing social circle, even the occasional rumor that she wished official court prayers to reference their majesties in the plural. None of this breached constitutional law, but each tiny deviation made traditionalists twitch. And none twitch harder than Princess Anne, whose life has been lived at parade ground tempo since the day she first saluted a trooping flag at 13. Anne's anger was fed by memory. She was her mother's most vigorous backstage guardian, the one who visited Elizabeth during final hospital stays, the one who still travels coach class when official budgets tighten, the one who, quietly, reminded staff that Elizabeth's express wish had been for Camilla to remain queen consort. To Anne's mind, honoring that wish was not optional. Her intervention, then, was not petty sibling rivalry, it was oath-keeping, breathed into new lungs. Charles is a man of compromise by nature, compelled since childhood to reconcile paternal sternness with maternal thrift. Yet even compromise has edges. On this night he found them. What emerged, according to two sources briefed on the fallout, was a private agreement. Camilla would maintain her ceremonial prominence, trooping balcony, charity patronages, state banquet greetings, yet internal precedents would freeze at queen consort. No constitutional wording would migrate toward sovereign parity without full family consultation. And future marquee events, think Commonwealth summits, investitures, remembrance balcony lineups, would quietly position the Princess of Wales as first woman in line after the monarch. That last clause may prove the sharpest. Catherine's popularity polls routinely hover above 90%. She blends Diana's warmth with a planner's discipline, and her early years initiative has won praise from pediatricians across the political aisle. In effect, Charles signaled an heir preparatory runway that tilts toward generational renewal rather than spousal elevation. The message to Camilla was clear: your chapter is honored, but the book is being typeset for the next reign. The pact, however, was not broadcast. Palaces bleed influence when they air laundry. Instead, insiders leaked fragments, enough to stir the tabloids, not enough to quote. Q whispers about a Buckingham showdown, a polo field payback, an icy nod over dessert. That cacophony accelerated when a separate thread emerged: Princess Anne's decades-old grievance involving Camilla's first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, once Anne's own romantic near-miss, until religion and rank drew a curtain across their courtship. History might be archived, but it never deletes. In some corridors, they say Anne's jab carried the echo of that old heartbreak, layered atop loyalty to Elizabeth II. Yet to reduce the clash to jilted affection is to miss the deeper gears turning. Modern monarchy sells itself as stability in a jittery world: polished balcony photos, seamless regimental drills, unbroken chains of service visits. Behind the optics lies a family corporation negotiating mergers of influence. Camilla's supporters argue she has modernized Charles, softening his public image, coaxing more laughter into state rooms, humanizing him after decades as the brooding Prince of Wales. Critics counter that soft power can morph into shadow authority, and that only the crown's direct successor should wield that kind of gravitational pull. Somewhere between those poles stands Kate. Since marrying William, she has navigated the impossible syllabus of royal life: photo calls, foreign tours, tabloid autopsies, while cultivating a profile as Britain's unofficial first mum. Playgroups in Belfast 1 week, Downing Street Early Years Task Force the next, a televised piano performance at Westminster Abbey by Christmas. The Queen late Elizabeth spotted raw resilience and quietly mentored her. Private teas, handwritten notes, the Dame Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order. Inside staff files, she is now labelled the stabilizer. And stabilizers are precisely what a palace requires when debate threatens to unlace gold braid seams. Mini-CTA break. Craving more beneath the velvet intel like this? Tap subscribe and we'll keep the Blue Blood bulletins coming, no spoilers missed. Hook number 3 arrived courtesy of Prince William. Witnesses say that, 2 mornings after the dinner, he requested a brief with his father. The topic: streamlining the working roster and reaffirming Catherine's central role. William is no firebrand, he calibrates every step with helicopter pilot cool, but sources privy to that meeting describe firm clarity, a son reminding a father that the monarchy's license to operate comes from public trust, and public trust currently has Catherine framed in the viewfinder. Charles listened, weighed, nodded. A father, a king, a chess player all at once. No pieces removed, but the board subtly reset. Camilla, for her part, did not topple crowns in rage. She spent the next weekend at Ray Mill, her private retreat, walking dogs, hosting old friends, letting paparazzi lenses cool. When she returned to London, she opened an osteoporosis clinic, gripped a patient's hand for 7 minutes, and smiled for the cameras. A masterclass in continuity. Yet staff noticed quiet changes, fewer schedule overrides, a newly meticulous adherence to seating plans, a revived deference when Catherine enters a room. Signals speak louder than decrees. Outside the iron gates, royal watchers devoured every morsel. TikTok exploded with lip-reading montages, Twitter mapped eye contact timelines. One commentator quipped, "It's like Succession with tiaras, but the scripts are written in centuries." Yet beneath the hashtags, something weightier stirred. Questions about how monarchy renews without tearing its fabric, how personal loyalties interact with constitutional guardrails, how grief for a departed queen can weaponize memory. Those questions will soon lift their heads again. The next Commonwealth Heads Summit looms, invitations require precedence charts. Will Camilla rank equal host or honorary consort? Court monarchs know that one misplaced name card can spark diplomatic frost. And then there is trooping the color, balcony optics once more. Rumor suggests Anne has proposed that Catherine stand directly beside Charles, Camilla one pace to the left, a configuration unseen since pre-Diana days. If it happens, cameras will know exactly where to zoom. Charles's private secretary is already calibrating, stability, yes. Subtext, unavoidable. Aides polish phrasing, aligning speeches with silent choreography. Anne, meanwhile, has returned to form, opening Coast Guard stations, inspecting regimental stables, her message delivered, her duty resuming. She never needed spotlights, she merely sharpens them. Whether this accord holds or mutates will depend on personalities, headlines, and the river-deep currents of public opinion. Camilla's rehabilitation has come a long way since the other woman era, yet residual skepticism clings to the national mood like London drizzle. Catherine, conversely, floats on polling charts, but faces the slow-burn scrutiny that awaits any future queen. William will navigate that tide, balancing filial affection with his obligation. And the nation will watch, teacups trembling on saucers, for the next ripple beneath the palace surface. Because tonight, inside walls hung with ancestral portraits, a sister defended history, a king protected future leverage, and a wife absorbed both forces with practiced grace. The chandeliers stopped quivering. But the echo of Anne's words, queen consort, not queen, continues to hum through corridors where carpets muffle everything except truth. And that, royal watchers, is how a single sentence can tilt a throne.